be the capacity building. So see if we can start a process that first allows us to identify first what our needs will be, and then how we prosecute them. Share the joy, come on in. Share the joy, come on in. So you are the one presenting. Are you doing slides? Or? So you are the one presenting. Are you doing slides? We can get started. All right, and then we can get started.
Afternoon. We had slides to some beautiful slides, but the way present the events. But the way the events turned out. Now, I don't think the slides are relevant because the slides are relevant because we finished the program before lunch. So I'm just going to speak off of the cuff. I'm just going to speak off of the cuff. I'm supposed to give an update of Botswana. It was said here earlier that the journey for Botswana, I think it has over 20 years. And it hasn't been happening until about 2 years ago. It was put as part of the digital transformation strategy of the country, adopted by smart. There was a first interim committee set up in 2020. I think. I was part of that. I was part of that. Quickly set up the association. Botswana is an association. We are not a P2A association yet. The interim executive committee set up. Managed to recruit about 60 participants on the Botswana. We have members. Participants on the Botswana. We have members. About 60. We set ourselves a target that when we reach 47, we will have an annual general meeting that will kickstart the Botswana. I think that was achieved. I think last year December when we had our first AGM. As an association, with 60 members, I think about 64 somewhere there. Thereafter, that's when we had the first. That's when we had the first executive committee. I was unfortunate to be in that committee again. Forced to be in that committee again. Then we started running. Botswana in earnest. We had our first strategy session that happened in Palapa. We set out our 3-year plan, our target, knowing that our target 64 has already been built of 64 members, but we wanted to have about 100 in where we are now. We want to pilot. At a point where we want to pilot. With 8 institution ministries. Through the support of the ministries. The 8 institutions are your big universities, some research institutions, including BITRI. Choose that. I didn't choose that. It just happened that BITRI was part of those. The BDIH is selected. The BDIH is part of those. We have since ordered equipment for. The CPE customer premises equipment for the network to be set up for the 8. We tried to see if the existing infrastructure that this institutions criteria that we want to use can fit the criteria that we want to use for the Botswana, so that we can only one passed the test. Only one passed the test. Only one institution now. We will connect only one institution now while we wait for others. CPs that we ordered, and then we can hook up those. Now, this is just for the network. This is just for the network, for the interconnection between institutions. The interconnection between institutions. We need to get out and connect with other entrants. Then we are part of the Ubuntu Alliance. As you know that. We are co-hosting a conference tomorrow through the Africa Connect 3. We are supposed to get a POP. that will interlink us with other NRENs. We were promised that the POP will happen fully paid by September, fully paid by the way. We don't owe UbuNet anything. That will allow us to connect these institutions through a 10 gig line internet connectivity to other institutions. Brief, I think in brief, that is what we had given ourselves. Give us an update. That we will have. We had given ourselves. I think that we will have one event this year, this financial year. We are having as Botswana. We are having one, and we are having two tomorrow. We are having one today. We are starting another one tomorrow. So we have achieved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So I'm moderating this time, and I'm moderating this time, and because I want to make it also quicker. So Botswana achieved events. So Botswana is a research network. So we need to talk about the infrastructure. That's the real achievement for a research network. Well, congratulations anyway. I'm glad that you were moving very quickly. Which is I've heard. What you didn't mention, which is I've heard, is that I don't know if it's still in is that the government has ring-fenced some fiber for your network. Well, in any case, that would accelerate the emergence of the network. That would accelerate the emergence of the network, because if you have to pay for links, it needs funding and resourcing, and then if you don't have to pay for links, then you can actually do
what
things
I thought we would talk
much
about
quicker.
in terms of the
But what I thought we would talk about in terms of the infrastructure is infrastructure to support open
if we're
science.
looking at the
So
looking at that,
if we're looking at that, we're looking at some place to keep the publications,
keep the data,
some place to keep the data,
identifiers so that this data
and publications are discoverable,
integrate them,
and then to integrate them, we're talking about matching up data from different sources to present information. To be able to do that, you have to be able to identify and have a way of links that don't change, and have a way of describing that data that the other person that's going to use it or share it. Understand.
So what I thought we
all of
could
that
do to help drive
so what I thought we could do to help drive the outcome of this morning, where we have working group working on the policy, is to start to do the things that that gives the community ownership of this process. So you are going to be, at least as far as scientific publications and data are concerned, and you're going to be producing and largely consuming that data, your communities. So I mean the library communities, university communities, research institutes. So what we have done as LIBSENSE in other countries is promoted community infrastructures driven by the REN and the library as a... Because don't forget, the REN only exists because there are campuses to interconnect. Regional RENs like us will interconnect these RENs in our regions and connect them to other world regions. But the only place you will find users are on campus. So all of this conversation boils down to what happens on campus. And that's the issue. And that's the discussion we're trying to have.
So that I was hoping this would be interactive. I'm not doing
I was hoping this would be interactive. I'm not doing very well in terms of
maybe one of the things I want
moderating this. So maybe one of the things I want to ask, because some questions came on, and I was talking to Costas about one. Something about the Library Act that has been repealed. What is that about? Yes. Yes. Is that a? It's a bill. Is that a? What does the bill say? It's a bill. What does the bill say? What is it about? What is this? And what does it? I mean, what does the law? Does it? And what does it? I mean, what does the law? Does it? Is it so? The National Library. Okay. The National Library. Okay. What about academic libraries? Does it include them? What about academic libraries? Does it include them? This is not about the academic libraries. So okay, so this is not about the academic library. So you have a... So, okay, fair enough.
I wish he was still here because he could speak to it better. I wish he was still here because he could speak to it better. But I believe the restructuring is that all librarians are centralized under the National Library Service. So I think as long as it's for a public institution. So I think academic libraries apply. I think it's public. I think it's public. It's public.
You were there when he was talking.
Monaniki, you were there when he was talking. Doesn't it bring the new Library Act doesn't it bring all librarians under the same umbrella? Brings all librarians under the same umbrella, does it not? As long as it's for a public institution, not a private institution. But it brings all librarians together was my understanding of it. I think it does. I think it does impact. So I think it does. I think it does impact academic libraries.
The structure would actually affect public librarians and not extend to the government space. Those outside the government space. That's how it works. No, that's how it works.
Yes, it does look like we need to look into that one. Yes, it does look like we need to look into that one. Because as a community, especially as academic librarians, not to say open science does not include public libraries. In Ghana, because for example in Ghana, the public library is actually driving a lot of activity with the tech hubs and innovation sector. So that's open science, citizen science in that case, and that there is there are connections to this, and we'll be looking at that in the policy group to make sure that that's also captured. In this case where we have NRENs and libraries now, academic librarians and the NREN can actually sort of provide some impetus. The way we actually is to say, look at it, is to say in the morning. Just like what we said in the morning, where we're going to have a working group that's going to look at the policy, create something, a draft, review what's available, come up with something that's contextual for Botswana, and then we can discuss that. We want to do the same on the infrastructure level. So for us, it's about 7 needs that we already do as research networks. So if I may ask, how many institutions here have an institutional repository? That's BOU, right? That's BOU, right? Okay, so there's an institutional repository there. Okay, so there's an institutional repository there.
I will talk on that. We have 4 that are fully registered that are actually registered.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
From the higher understanding that they are at different levels of developing or registering or getting.
So when you say registered, you mean in the open access repository. Even in that directory, there's also. I find that even in that directory, there's also sometimes the repositories are not actually in the state they should be in. You know, sometimes they have some obsoleted software. Now the way repositories are moving. Right? Especially in a country like Botswana, there's a big argument for a shared platform. That is, a shared platform that is contemporary, that you can actually use to build capacity in this new brave world of open science. So, for instance, do any of your repositories, the 4 that are registered, support any identifiers? So you're probably using this space. Facility for a handle. So this space has facility for a handle. Who uses that? They all have handles. So you have registered. They all have handles. So you have registered handle server with properly routable handle server, and you get properly routable handles, or you just which is really take what this space offers, which is really a placeholder. No, but that is not. It's just a test, you know. So it's not. But that is not. It's just a test, you know. So it's not a real. So you not. That's not discoverable. If you're using handles, so you do need for. If you're using handles, you would have to get a name. Register with the handle server. Get a namespace. Globally, right, and it's that namespace that's globally discoverable. So there's some conversations around repositories you need to have. We think it is better to learn as a group. We also know that even if that most libraries don't have the technical capacity to keep these repositories current. So you have many things you need to do. You need to index, provide access, sometimes provide access. Sometimes you might want to keep some material there. We want open access repositories, but if it's data that you can support that needs to be closed, it means you need also identification and access mechanisms. And the way we've approached this is to have and to give some the NREN, because it's still your network, some role, because it's still your network. So don't forget the NREN is you. So the NREN might be called Botswana and there's shedding there, but it's really the community. So there's the NREN, the infrastructure, and then there's the NREN, the community. So the NREN connects campuses, librarians are in campuses, take lecturers and so on. So you're the primary stakeholders of the NREN. So your needs are what the NREN should serve. You can wait. And there are two ways you can be. You can wait for the NREN to think about how it serves your needs, or you can mandate the NREN to provide a service for you. And we think it's better the other way around. And we think that, one way we can, at least our interests are aligned. You need repositories that work. You need repositories that work. Even if you can do everything right. Even if you can't do it individually. It is those kind of problems that NRENs are made to solve. So it means shared problems. One of the things we can do as a group. So it means, one of the things we can do as a group is to see if we can walk along those lines and see if we can pilot a repository that we aim as a national repository to present as a national repository something we all share. Is that of any interest to this community?
I was saying it's the line of thinking. I was saying it's the line of thinking that we are having, that we need that nation, that connected. One of the limitations is that different institutions are at different structural levels. The basic catalog. So even the basic catalog, even before going to the repository, there is no communication. And then there's also limitation with institutional policies and processes. We are different institutions. There is no communication in saying yes. That's the direction we want to take. So there's a lot that we are still engaging in discussions on as the consortium, as the academic and research.
So here's an opportunity. So maybe we sort of identify maybe three or four of those big ticket items. When it comes to sharing platforms, you can start to think about the REN. Look at the research network. Look at the research network as what you're talking about. That infrastructure that belongs to all the different institutions that becomes a tool for achieving some of this, or for resolving some of these challenges. And how we do that, the details on how we do that, we can discuss later. But if we have this sort of tacit understanding and agreement that that's what we're going to do, to work together, when it comes to librarian-specific matters, but then when you are looking at the broader open science agenda within Botswana, and you want to think about infrastructure, we're talking connectivity. I'm going to read off a conversation I was just having with cloud, there's connectivity, cloud, publication of repositories, you're publication of data, you're going to be managing, we're talking about open data, maybe not managing open scientific data societies for your campus, different societies on my campus. Some of them might be specific to a discipline, but you might also have general purpose data for maybe the students, the younger people. At some point, because the younger people, we have found the early career researchers, we have found are the easiest adopters of these demonstrators. So you would want to connect. So I hear a shared catalog. I don't know if you've seen some other examples elsewhere. I don't know if you've seen some other examples elsewhere where you've got a platform that provides catalogs, but each institution is separate. So it's a multi-distinct and separate kind of. So it's a multi-tenanted kind of scenario where every tenant manages their own share catalog, but they share the infrastructure that provides it. So that is, it is the most efficient, most economic way to do it, and it's the way you stay contemporary. So you can do that with catalogs. And you can also do that with repositories. That is something, and I think that is something within this, that the BLC or the Library Association. So we're very happy to work with both REN. And yourselves. It will be mostly yourselves because we're talking repositories and actually initiate, a pilot that supports the outcome that we're hoping for in January. So we start to think and talk around these notions.
What I
want to say is that I think in most of the going on discussion that could be going on within the consortium, mostly institutions that are doing research, as in like institutions that are doing research but not academic based. We find that probably we need to be engaged because we have built infrastructures and we actually liaison with the academic institutions to try to have their buy-in and how we can be able to share the data. We have forums where they will be voicing to us that can we create a platform where we can share the data. But in terms of the forum where the consortium discusses the infrastructure and the build-up of the repository, that is probably where we've not been fully engaged. And I think from the discussion I've had from Prof, where he mentioned that they've had 8 institutions that were engaged and they actually bought the equipment. It would be also needful for us to engage with them because maybe we are at the same level in terms of the infrastructures we have built. We have some institutions that are not academic who we are basically licensing with and partnering with. Some of them we've done MOUs and we are basically building up on to find a platform where we can be able to share. We can say we share the data. But in terms of currently, I think that is the drive we are going. But I think the forum for making sure that Boston gets involved, or the forum like this keep caring, it will really improve a lot so that we are not really in silos. We have our own the other side and there is other group also doing on the other side. Thanks.
So thank you very much. First of all, I think. So thank you very much. First of all, I think the colleagues here. So the colleagues here forum alive should basically keep this forum alive. To do that, I think one way to do that is by having an agenda which we set now. So if we have agenda which we set now, then we will use that to drive our discussion. So whatever we're saying here is just to establish that agenda. Somebody was mandated to create. I think somebody was mandated to create a working group. No, we will create a bigger mailing list that has everybody attended broad conversation and start a conversation, a broad conversation. Yes, there will be working groups, and I think we should break them down. Infrastructure and capacity building, infrastructure and capacity building, which is how LIBSENSE works, and you will see plenty of material that will be produced. And then have that conversation. And there's no other way to the conversation you have, because the more of the conversation you have, the more of this gems, this nutmegs, this gems you get, who's here, who is doing what do I need to do now, rather than so that I don't have to wait for 3 years, because I'm seeing laws being changed, policies being reviewed, excellent time to actually pitch in. We agreed on our immediate agenda for infrastructure. From your side would be shared catalog. The shared catalog will explore that, and would explore this shared platform. Open access repository platform. Then we will continue and that conversation will understand a little bit more about what is available in terms of and how you plan to share it, so we can take that into consideration when we're actually develop. There's one other area that we are working in. As RENs in Africa, which is the trust and identity. All of this sharing. So all of this sharing, when it is completely open, it's just a reference, a URL. When you work in this kind of, you're going to need constructs. You're going to need identity. It's almost impossible, to put it simply, it's almost impossible to conceive working in a digital environment without digital identity. We're all halfway there. There's a whole lot of views of for identity, different systems for identity in our universities, which are not sort of applicable today. So email is not identity. I could be, email. I could be your email. Most systems will not permit you if they wanted to use email. If they wanted to identify you to a certain level of assurance. Some of our researchers cannot access some systems because across the world, most of these systems, especially when there are data sources or maybe even just anything that provides information, they need to know who is accessing, and the way that's done in education is through federating identities of different players. So on campus, you normally would have some kind of identity that you use to access your systems. I don't know how Botswana is. But we found
I don't know how
Botswana is. But we found out in Nigeria, for example,
about 75% of the campuses
about 75% of the campuses didn't have
proper identity management.
proper identity management.
That means, as much as you have
So
the registry
that
having
means,
data,
as much as you have the registry having data and you have
university,
those, you
don't
know
have
who's in
one
your
source that
university.
tells you at any
You
point
don't
in
have
time,
one
a
source
single
that tells you
of
at
truth
any point
of
in
the
time, a
identities
single source
in
of
your
truth
system.
of the identities
But maybe I'm
in
wrong,
your system.
so I should ask.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Is there any
so I should
institution
ask.
here that has
Is there any institution here that has
one store of communities'
communities' identities
systems
that it uses across the systems, or do you have databases of students in different forms?
Or should I rephrase that?
So should I rephrase that?
Typically, in an institution,
you would have,
or in an organization,
you would have
right?
all your users,
in
right?
some store,
In
whatever you call
some
it,
store,
data store of any sort.
whatever you call it,
In
in
some
some
store
system,
of any sort.
one system, in some system, one system,
You would connect to
and
every other
you would
system
connect
that
to
needs
every
user
other system that needs
by connecting
user
to this one
identification by connecting
So
to
that
this one
becomes your
system.
single source of truth.
So that becomes your
in your
single source of
environment.
truth
Are your
in your
institutions
environment.
like that?
Are your institutions
Or do you
like
have,
that?
I build an application,
Or do you have, I
have
build
one
an
login,
application
people have to get-
and I
have
have
users
one
in this
login,
system,
people have to get, I
I
have
have
users in
another
this
system,
system,
I have users in that
I have another
system, so you
system,
have
I have users in that system,
six
so you have like
usernames and passwords that you access
6
different
usernames
systems
and passwords that
on
you
campus.
access different systems on campus.
So maybe you just
Mine was just
Yes.
Mine was just. Are you not?
Yes.
Are you not referring to the research?
Well,
ID?
now you're talking. Now we're
Well,
talking about. Now you're talking. Now we're talking about that space.
Orchid
right?
IDs,
Orchid IDs. They have like a number of
research
them now.
IDs.
They have like a number of them
Think
now.
about that, right?
But
what is
think
researcher
about
ID
that,
trying to
right?
do?
What is researcher ID trying to do?
So, but researcher ID is an external system.
So, but researcher ID is an external system.
So, if I wanted to be certain
that that ID
what it claimed
was
to be,
who
is the
what
only
it claimed
person
to
that can
be,
tell me?
who is the only person that can tell me?
So you, that primary hierarchy, where the user resides, is the only person that can tell me whether that user is who. Now, on that campus, you don't have one system. It is where all the users are. It is very difficult for you to respond challenge like because then you have a challenge like in governance. If I cannot follow that user in my system, know where he is or where he's at, or what roles from where he can access, or what roles disparate systems, and I have disparate systems, I might check this system and it has the right information, and this other part of my information might use it. This other part of my campus might use information from here, and it might survive. So it might while you're working on that other, but once you start to work with other people who need a certain amount of trust, you are free that you can assert that they say they are from an institution, you have to meeting those people, you have to have system check.
It's not the same as a situation where to access all the systems in an institution, it's the one identified here. That is the one thing. But the other thing that you're talking about is to have a sort of verification.
So use a single identifier across campus,
Yes.
right? It means you have this, not one employee, so you use a single identifier. You have a single identification.
Yeah.
Just a single user and
Yeah.
one email. It's not to say you have one email and a different password here, same email and a third password there, because that happens in many HR. You might have you might have a login to HR with a certain set of credentials, access different email access different from access to some other systems. If you have something like some universities, so if you have something like Active Directory deployed properly, yes, then you have
much. I think you are enlightening. Thank you so much. I think you are enlightening us also about a challenge, because we also then have a challenge where
is that, and I'm sure you have used it already. Let me give you an example. Who's ever used online when it says login as Facebook or login as Google? Facebook has your information. And that's identity federation. So when you go to, so what happens when you do that? You want to access. Wherever you go, it says Facebook has who you are, your information. Then you go back and so when you go to this resource that you want to access, it says tell me who you are. By logging in, then it says, then you go back and if you say login with Facebook, it takes you back to Facebook, who authenticates you by logging in. You have confirmed to Facebook who you are. Then Facebook says to the resource, let them through. So they have said this person got Facebook. Now we're going to replace login with Facebook with login with your institution. So that's then you'll be able to do single sign-on, first of all on campus with your applications, and then on a national level through the Botswana Federation of those identities on each of your campus. Yes, I know.
You can explain also the benefits that arise from this through Eduroam.
Yes, I know. I was just going to say, so get. Yeah. So no, I will follow. So this basic identity. No, I was going to. So I was just going to say, what you have done, what you do when. Yeah. So maybe. So no, I will follow. So this basic identity. Right? Don't forget what you have done, what you do when you, so maybe scrap Facebook, let's call it, and call it ID, for instance, right? So let's call EduID BW. So what's your Botswana ID? Botswana or something. Let's call it Botswana ID this time, right? So let's call it Botswana ID. Mobile. So what's your Botswana ID? Your Botswana ID is the same ID you have on campus, but just this time it is mobile. It can go elsewhere. Federation. So Costas mentioned two applications, something called Eduroam. I don't know if anyone this identity type Federation. It's a Wi-Fi service. We have that something called Eduroam to use your campus. I don't know if anybody's heard about Eduroam. So Eduroam is a Wi-Fi service and get internet that allows you access to the network to use your campus credentials. So you can call it in all subscribing institutions technology and get internet access. Eduroam get access to the network everywhere. It works in the same way, so you can call it a Wi-Fi profile of this technology. So very often, Eduroam is deployed everywhere. Maybe you can go to eduroam.org and find out those locations. So very often, because I have connected to Eduroam, maybe in the office or somewhere, I won't be asking. I can just come into an airport with my own, and I'm connected. If you had Eduroam here, I won't be asking. I will be logging in, with my own
environment like this, you can imagine how
office
what it
details
means.
as you do with your
When she
campus.
goes to your institution, she's not
in a-
looking
in
for
a-
somebody to
in
give her
a
access to the network.
connected environment
Of course,
like this,
there
you
are
can imagine
controls,
how
not
what
to
it
say
means.
that, people
It
can
means when
just
she
come and
goes
go
to
as
your
they please. You can
institution,
design that
she's
as
not
you
looking
like,
for somebody to
but
give
you
her
have the
access to the
technology
network.
to make
Of
it
course,
happen.
there are controls. It's not to say that
That's on the
people can
Wi-Fi
just come
side.
and go as you
Now,
please.
you can apply
design
this
that
as
as
well.
you
We already
like,
talked about
but you have the
applications.
technology
We can
to
apply
make
this
it
to
happen.
the internet, to the web applications.
That's on the
to
Wi-Fi side. Now you can apply this as well. We already talked about
anything that
applications.
needs identity.
We can apply this to
Say,
the
well,
internet, to the
we're
web
going to use federated
applications, to
identity.
instrumentation.
So we will have a pilot like that.
Anything
We have
that
a
needs
program called
identity, you could say, well,
EduID.Africa.
we're going to use federated identity.
Yeah, .Africa.
So we will have a pilot
Which,
like that. We have a program
is working
called
at 3
EduID.Africa,
So one level is supporting
.Africa.
countries like we're doing here,
which
is to establish their own
is working at
identity
3
federations.
levels. So one level
Another thing we
is
would say,
supporting
another level
countries
is that
like we're doing here.
we have created
to establish their own
proxy
identity
ID.
federations.
The idea being that
Another
even
thing
before
we
you
would
actually
say, another
establish
level
yours,
is
if there are any groups of
we have
researchers
created
that actually
a proxy
need to
ID.
use this technology,
The idea being that
immediately,
even before you
then
actually
they have
establish
an option.
yours, if there are any
Now,
groups
these
of
identity
researchers that
federations
actually
were
need to
created,
use this
like,
technology
from country to country,
immediately, then
are
they have an option.
actually,
Now, these identity
interconnected
federations that are
federations
created,
federations
like
called
from country to
educate.
country,
Now, but the last count,
actually,
I think there are interconnected in a
probably about
federation
4 or
of
5
federations
thousand
called educate
service providers.
Now,
By the last
it's just
count,
a pity
I
have
think
no
there
easy
are
access to demonstration.
probably
but we will
about
have these
4 or 5
conversations online.
thousand
If you went to
service providers.
edugain.org,
It's just a pity I
you will
have
see
no
that it's an
easy
it's
access
a global
to
interfederation.
demonstration, but we will have
So
these
imagine
conversations
what that
online.
means.
If you went to
It means that,
edugain.org,
She has
you will
data.
see that it's a global
Let's assume it
interfederation.
was data she wanted
So imagine
access to.
what
She
that
wanted to know
means.
who was accessing
It means
the
that
data.
like
if
she
said,
has data,
you can log in by edugain.
let's assume it was
means
data
that
she wanted access to. She wanted to know
Anybody
who
in
was
that
accessing the
federation
data.
Of federation,
If she said
which would include
you
like
can log in by
I can't remember the
edugain,
last count.
it means that
We're talking about at least
anybody
8
in that
or 8
federation
countries. Can you check for
of
me?
federations, which would include like
So the
I can't
countries,
remember the last count.
and in those countries you have
we're talking
service
about at least
providers,
80 or so countries.
identity
Can you check for me?
the campuses are
So the
always
countries,
identity providers
and in those
because you have
countries you have service
So you have users
providers,
and
identity
Then
providers.
applications
The
and other
campuses are
resources
always
are service
identity providers because you have
The
users.
identities
So you have users and
access to
identity
services.
providers. Then
Now, if you have a
applications
circle of
and
trust,
other
where
resources
you
are
have
service providers.
identity
The
provider,
identities
service provider. So we
access
agree
the
on
services.
how we access each
Now, if
other.
you have a
It
circle of
means-
trust,
and then you
where you have
multiply that by
identity
interconnecting
provider, service
federations.
provider.
So we agree
Somebody
on how we
in
access each
some
other.
institution,
It means
in,
and
say,
then you multiply
Greece,
that by
are connecting
Greece is
the
a very good
federations.
example, because
Somebody
GRNet, the
in
Greek
some institution in,
actually
say,
operates
Greece.
like this. almost
Actually,
on
Greece is a
classical
very good
level,
example
providing
because
for the entire
GRNet, the
country
Greek
and some other
Botswana,
countries in
actually
the-
operates
in South Europe,
like this, almost on a
Um,
classical level,
providing
providing
have a
for the
resource
entire
that they're
country
exposed to
and
everything.
some other countries.
What it
in
means, if
in
you are
South
part
Europe,
of that interfederation, is that you will also
you might have a
access.
resource that they've exposed to
Now,
educate.
if that is
What
the
it
way
means,
they-
if you are
they
part
will
of that
actually provide
interfederation,
authentication,
is that you will
if
also
you're
have
not in
access
that
to it.
federation, then you
Now,
have no access
if
to it.
that is the way they,
So that's the
they
idea.
actually
So
provide
that's why that's another
authentication,
important pilot.
if you're not in
for
that
federating,
federation, then you
federating
have
our
no
identities.
access to it.
If we find
So
that
that's
the
the idea.
identities are not
So
so
that's why
good
that's another
on
important
campus
pilot
level to
for
federate,
federating
then
them,
we have,
federating your identities.
we have
If we
also
find that the
an approach
identities are
for
not so
fixing
good
that.
on campus
We will
level
determine that
to
during the
federate,
pilot, but that's
then
one
we
of the
have
things we want So I don't
also
know.
an approach
I
for
think that's
fixing
enough work
that.
for now.
We will determine that during the pilot, but that's one of the things we want to do.
We have 3 things, don't we? So I don't know.
Identity
I think that's enough
federation,
work for now.
look into a shared catalog,
know.
and a
have
shared
3
national,
things, don't we?
national
Open
identity
access
federation,
repository. And all of this,
look into a shared catalog, and a shared national open access repository. And all of this,
we would, I would bring in some library colleagues.
Both?
You're already part of many libraries. BLC actually can.
I
take
would,
responsibility
I would
for
bring
the
in some
shared
library
catalog.
colleagues. You're already
That is
part
the
of many
leadership.
libraries.
We will
BLC
provide the
actually can take
technical
responsibility
support and
for
connect you with some
for
other
the
colleagues who
shared
know better than
catalog.
us.
you know, at least the leadership, we will provide the technical support and connect you with some other colleagues who know better than us. For the shared open access repository, we have developers in the Invenio team. There's something called Invenio. Invenio is a general purpose access repository. I know you're very familiar with this space. We can do anything you like. We're totally agnostic when it comes to software. It is about what you want to do, your requirements, and if the software meets your requirements. It's not whether you like this space or you have known this space. It's what you want to do. Oh, even at the BLC level, BLC is working within the Botswana level. But this is a REN affair. So let's call it LIBSENSE, please. That way we don't get confused. Oh, even at the BLC level, BLC is working within the Botswana level. But this is a REN affair. So let's call it LIBSENSE, please. That way we don't get confused with the names. Yeah. Let's make it LIBSENSE. So LIBSENSE Botswana. So in LIBSENSE Botswana, we have BLC. It's by taking this community. We have BLC. We have yes, that's the whole idea of LIBSENSE. It's by taking these communities, federating your needs and bringing structures, creating a construct in which you own and govern this infrastructure. The governance of this infrastructure is so vital. You lose your power. You cannot do this hands-off, or you should not do this hands-off. Even for everybody, because Europeans, Americans, you lose your power. You're going to. This is a fast-moving space. Taking decisions, even for everybody, Europeans, Americans, it's changing every day. People have different reasons for interacting or taking decisions without actually understanding your own need.
All I wanted is just to know, you mean LIBSENSE will take the costs for you to be able to handle the development and put to control side? All I wanted is just to know, you mean LIBSENSE will take the costs for you to be able to handle the development and put to control side when you authenticate different levels for the different in the campus? Because if you are going to be actually find that in, for example, this scenario is not the case for maybe enhancing, because if you are going to be actually assisting, for example, authentication levels for maybe enhancing the development side of that, those different applications, they should be a cost. Okay. That's what I was asking.
Let me give you a simple
Who bears the cost?
There is this in Japan.
We share the cost.
Right? There's this organization. Let me give you a simple model. So Gyro Cloud. There is this in Japan. In Japan, right? There's this organization called Gyro Cloud. It's called so Gyro Cloud for me is in reference. An organization called the National Informatics Institute. There's also the Japanese NREN is an organization called the National Informatics Institute. So they worked with BLC the other way around, but I know the eyes always mix me up. Is that Informatics Institute or Institute of Informatics? One of them talking about. So they worked with BLC equivalent. At the beginning, there were a number of in Japan and created this cloud platform I'm talking about. So this multi-tenanted platform. Expenditure to maintain. At the beginning, there were a number of couple of big universities who were spending big ticket, so expenditure to maintain the infrastructure. Everybody's on that platform. So all they did was mop up. The other guys wouldn't have to bring the price of running. But today, everybody's on that platform because it's much more cost efficient. $500 They've managed to bring the price of running. I know we have resource challenges in Africa. Vanguard, not that bad. Cutting edge repository to about $500 per institution. I know we have resource challenges in Africa, but it's not that bad. That's the we point. Can pay $500 to our NRENs to run a service that's the idea. Used together. And that's what the NREN That's brings. The point. So when you're thinking about costs, you should be thinking about sharing costs. A platform to sort of drive. That's the idea. And that's what the NREN brings. Economies of scale, on a platform for collaboration, and a platform to sort of drive this kind of projects. So we'll provide at the beginning, we will support you while you think through a business model. As a matter of fact, so we'll provide support in different forms. Some of it might be part of the program. As a matter of fact, we had some project management. I don't know who saw Angelica this morning about the Africa Connect 4 project. We are in part of the program we're having here. We had some project management board meetings yesterday about the Africa Connect 4 project. But if you did it as a group, so it might just be that this group might actually come up with a proposal to look for funding. But if you did it as a group, you're more likely to demonstrate. So if we build demonstrators, we need to scale, and you did a test, maybe with her data, and said, look, we have demonstrated that this can happen, but we need to scale, and we need much more money, then that's also a consideration. Again, through the RN, because in Africa Connect, we support research networks. Anybody from living? Oh, excellent. Doing good. I just want to be sure so I'm not that's enough for infrastructure, isn't there? Anybody from? Okay, so let's talk library. Oh, excellent. We're doing good. Okay, so that's enough for infrastructure, isn't there? Okay, so let's talk library.
You want our group?
The library.
No, that's for the policy.
What library?
What am I supposed to do?
The library.
No, that's for the policy. We have it working now.
Yes.
No, we have a team that is
We have a team.
3 pagans are
be
good.
presenting.
Oh, no, that's yes. Okay, presenting now.
Yes. Again. Oh. 3 pagans are good. Oh. That is part of the presentation, isn't it?
What are the current capacities for open science in Botswana, and how can we leverage them?
Okay. I think let's have the group talk. And we have, okay.
Rina,
I think
talk.
let's have the group talk.
Yeah.
So
And
give
we have
give her the
Rina
space after
waiting
her,
to
then
talk.
The group will
Yes.
discuss the different aspects, including
Yeah.
capacity building. So give her the space after her, then the group will discuss the different aspects, including capacity building. Okay. Okay. No, not for us. Maybe LIBSENSE, not here in Botswana. We don't work that way. No, not for us. Maybe LIBSENSE, not here in Botswana. We don't work that way.
Hello. Is she online? Is she here? Is she here? Hello. No. Is she online? Is she here? Is she here? Yeah, she's not here. No. Is she here? Yeah, call her. Not here. She's not online. She's not here. Yeah, she's not here. Yeah, she's left. She's not online. Yeah, she left. She's not here. Buzzer. Yeah, she's left. Yeah, she left. She's not here.
she's back. Oh, she's back.
You have to connect another laptop online. You have to connect another laptop online. Hello, Irene. Can you hear us?
It would be nice to actually
Hello, Irene.
project it.
Can you hear us?
It's embodied.
Hello,
It would be
Irina.
nice to actually have
Hello,
projected.
I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, they can hear you. Hello, Irina.
We just can't see you. That's the
Hello,
problem.
I'm speaking. Can you hear me? Maybe
Yes,
that's fine.
they can hear you.
But I guess it would be good to see my
We
slides.
just can't see
Yes,
you.
we
That's
need
the
to.
only
So,
problem.
Maybe
just
that's
give us a couple of minutes.
fine.
Let's try and see if
But
we
I
can
guess
get
it would be good to see my
We see
slides.
the slides. Yes, we need to. So
Mhm.
wait,
Thanks a
can you
lot,
just
but
give us a
if
couple of
it's
minutes.
too
Let's try
much
and see if we
trouble,
can get
maybe don't
slides up.
really bother.
We see the slides in some way.
Mhm. Thanks a lot, but if it's too much trouble, maybe don't really bother.
Sorry about this. Thank you, Rina. We now finally have your slides up. So you can, and we can hear you very clearly. Sorry about this. Thank you, Rina. We now finally have your slides up. So you can, and we can hear you very clearly. So we'll let you run off with it.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. But I think more could be done to make sure that as many as possible current research outputs more could be done to make sure that institutional repositories as many as possible current research outputs, journal articles are available in institutional repositories in Botswana. More articles by Botswana researchers. There was also similarly growth of volume. It would be good more and more articles by Botswana researchers are being published, and similarly there is open access press. It would be good to achieve more than 39%, and I hope today's discussion will help with that. And it was already a very energizing morning. Repository platforms where publications. So here you can see some examples and largest percentage repository platforms, the main specific where publications from Botswana. Now I guess it's fine because made available. Researchers want and largest percentage are the main specific repositories, and I guess it's fine because researchers want to graph here deposit where other researchers from their research disciplines are depositing, for example. But then the next graph here is about institutions. And if we look at institutions, we see, for example, University of, which means that probably those publications were co-authored by researchers from Botswana, or Stellenbosch University, Ghent University, which means that probably those publications were co-authored by researchers from Botswana and also from those universities, and those researchers from those universities made those publications available in their repositories, and it would be great if Botswana researchers which are really, as we heard today. There was a lot already said today about UNESCO recommendation on open science, which are really, as we heard today, and a legal mechanism, legal instrument, a very good framework of values and principles that could form the basis of a national. They provide a very good framework of values, policies, and principles that could form the basis of a national open science policy. Really, and I've already seen a number of policies in the introductory on the institutional and national level where those principles were really elegantly specific elaborated in the introductory parts of the policy. And then, of course, they offer a list of specific actions, and I would like to highlight some of the actions where open access libraries and Botswana could work together to achieve Botswana. So the first open access and importance of friends and open science implementation in Botswana. So the first part is about importance of open access journals and open access repositories, and I'd like to highlight that here in this UNESCO recognition there is an emphasis on open access journals, platforms, and on the repositories which are maintained by an academic institution, scholarly society, government agency, or other well-established not-for-profit organization devoted to public good. So there is a really strong emphasis on publicly managed making research available on open commercial players, public platforms, publicly funded and publicly managed platforms, and not outsourcing that to commercial players. There is also a strong emphasis to simply on journal articles, for example, and make an effort at least to make available scientific outputs related to publications. So, for example, data sets that were used to write an article. Repositories could be used for that, should also be made available together with an article, even institutional repositories. And the main repositories could be used for that, or shared repositories like Zenodor, or maybe even institutional repositories. And as research data management is an area where librarians and Botswana could work together. There's not-for-profit. There is also a strong emphasis on sustainability, and this sustainability is linked for a number of years. This not-for-profit and long-term vision, because universities have been there for a number of years, and they will remain for a number of years. So it only makes sense to really make available research outputs, institutional or shared national platforms. There is a section in the UNESCO recommendation make available research outputs in Botswana, open science benefits, and also discuss. There is a section in the UNESCO recommendation on promoting a common understanding of open science, open science benefits, and also discuss challenges that we might face there. And here there is a mention of multilingualism, and I think that's an area important for Botswana with indigenous knowledge. And when a national repository or institutional repositories are set up, I think it's important to follow care principles for indigenous knowledge management. Investing in open science infrastructures and services is another area. Follow respect for data stewardship. Libraries and Botswana could work together. Investing in open science infrastructures and services is another area. Making sure recommendations where libraries and Botswana could work together on shared research infrastructures like repositories, making sure that they are really local communities interoperable, and they follow global standards and serve the needs of local communities. Today's and this community building effort is really important, and I think that's where today's conversation come in, because we already see collaborations between librarians and Botswana and other actors, and that's really important. And that's an area where libraries have been great in providing training to students and researchers. And that's an area where libraries can play reflect very big role in this transition to open science. Open science concepts could be provided. It would be great to reflect how systematic and continuous capacity building efforts on open science concepts could be provided on institutional and maybe national level. And I think it's a good area for part of those discussions. Librarians to brainstorm, and also I probably when this effort becomes really systematic effort, be part of those discussions, come up with and also when this effort becomes really systematic effort, maybe we could come up with starting with probably career framework of open science competences, because for researchers at different career stages, and maybe starting with probably career researchers is a good strategy, because they already have training programs where open science courses could be added, for example, digital literacy courses, and they're the ones who are really motivated to learn new skills. In the libraries or in Botswana universities could play this role. And I think it's also high time to start thinking who retrained in the libraries or in Botswana universities could play this role of maybe an data stewardship, and it could be a librarian retrained to be a data steward, or it could be maybe an interested researcher who already practiced some research data management, or it could be both a librarian and researcher working together to offer this data stewardship services on the institutional level. Strong open science. And then UNESCO recommendation calls would be great to see institutional and national open science policies. Open science policies in Botswana, and it would be great to see institutional and national open science policies discuss in Botswana, how open science practices could be rewarded during research and assessment exercises, and in discuss how open science practices could be rewarded during research assessment exercises and in career evaluation systems. There will be a keynote when we talk about open science reform. There is also a need for research assessment reform, a very important area, and keep in mind there will be a keynote about that to make sure that the Open Science Alliance conference adopted is. And I think that's also a very important area to keep in mind and work on to make sure that an open science policy which is adopted is and that's an area where really implementable, that there is no contradiction between an open science policy and research assessment workflows. And that's an area where librarians could play a role, because they have expertise practices in that. Then it would be really important to and as one advances in research data management practices, then it would be really important to start rewarding diverse set of but also open science practices, not only publishing data management open access journals or making works available in open access repositories, but also supporting fair and care data management practices. We should acknowledge when we talk about challenges, especially open access challenges, then we often hear about predatory publishers. We should acknowledge when we talk about challenges, educational programs, especially open access challenges, we often hear about researchers among predatory publishers, and that should also be part of educational programs to make sure that researchers are not trapped in predatory publishing practices, but can really choose the best publication venues for their research. And director of open access journals, which is supported by librarians, could play a big role in that. Avoid and then really emphasize how open science practices could reduce scientific misconduct, avoid or prevent fabrication and falsification of research, responsible research and innovation. How open science could be part of some sections in the UNESCO responsible research and innovation. About innovations, and one of the innovations mentioned. There are also some sections in the UNESCO recommendation talking about innovations, and one of the innovations mentioned repositories, preprints, completed course and manuscripts that are made available on public repositories, preprint archives available from Botswana, and use the lens. Then we can see that when we check how much it's, how many preprints are already available from Botswana, if we use the lens, then we can see that 228 preprints are already made available by Botswana researchers, and one of them, for example, this one was initially made available on a preprint platform. It was reviewed, and then it was non-peer-reviewed research yet, and then it was submitted to BMC Medical Education Journal in August. It was reviewed, and then it was accepted for publication. So it's a good example when preprint was available in August, already benefit from, and then a publication followed up in January in their paper for half a year. Similarly, other researchers, authors of this paper, could already benefit from findings even before other researchers reading their papers. It was a good preprint. Similarly, other researchers could access these findings even before they were published in a journal. So it was a good preprint, solid research that was made available as soon as research was completed, and then it got an additional quality seal, peer review seal, when it was published in a journal. Encouraging preprints. When you will be thinking about your institutional and national open science policies, I think there should be a section about encouraging preprints. And I'd like to end with another idea about setting up an open science community, and there is an international network of open science and open scholarship communities, chance to lead. And in Africa, Nigeria is the only country where such a community has been set up. So there is a chance to live in Southern Africa for Botswana. And the idea is that these open science communities are groups of researchers, librarians, and other actors who advance open science practices on the institutional level. And I think Kostas already mentioned this morning that I don't know what happened. I hope you can still hear me. So I think Kostas already mentioned this morning that we're working together. I don't know what happened. I hope you can still hear me. And so I think Kostas already mentioned this morning that we're working together on open climate campaigns. And if you in your institutions are wondering where to start with open access and open science, I would say that climate research is a good area to start if you want to have some pilot projects, and we'll be happy to collaborate with you on that. Thank you so much, and I guess I'm handing over to a panel moderator.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've just heard a very interesting presentation from Rina. Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've just heard a very interesting presentation from Rina. That we might do basically ourselves as just giving us ideas or a framework of the kinds of things that we might do between ourselves as librarians and our Botswana policy implementation organization guidelines. And I think that it's anchored very much on the UNESCO policy implementation guidelines that were mentioned this morning. So we already have that framework. So we thought that in this part of the program, we would then invite a group of librarians to come and talk to you about the issues of the status of open access and open science in Botswana, to also talk about the policy framework and finally building capacity, and maybe just to finalize, maybe to also identify the opportunities that they see for supporting open science in Botswana, maybe based on the discussions of this morning, but also on Irina's discussions. But before we do that, maybe if you have a question, there's a burning question somewhere for Irina to tackle, because she's still here. We are open for business in that department. If you have a question or a comment that you wish to make.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
I saw something on Enoch. Maybe she could.
She's from BOU.
Kindly elaborate on that. Open. Thank you, ma'am.
Community of scholarship.
I saw something on Enoch. Maybe she could kindly elaborate on that. Open access.
Did you hear her, Irina?
Community of scholarship. So I saw that.
Did you hear the
I wanted
question?
an elaboration for that.
Is she there? I hope she heard you. Did you hear her, Irina? The question that you Did you hear the question on? Is she there? Did you hear the question that you should elaborate on? Is she there? Did you hear the question that you should elaborate on? Is she there? Is she there? Did you hear the question that you should elaborate on? Is she there? Is she there? Did you hear the question that you should elaborate on? Is she there? Is she there? Did you hear the question that you should elaborate on? Hello, Irina. Hello, Irina. Yes, it's on.
Said something. Hi, Rina, can you hear me? You said there was a feedback loop, but I can't hear you.
When you talk, this going to be an echo. I like one.
Yeah, maybe we should type the question, but I can't just say something.
Microphones, yeah, when you talk, there's going to be an echo. I like one.
Yeah, maybe we should type the question, but if you can just say, just say something.
Yeah, we should use one microphone.
Irina, I think the question was on the Koki slides where you were giving a picture of. Irina, I think the question was on the Koki slides where you were giving a picture of how we are doing as Botswana in terms of open access. And the question was, could you just go over those 3 slides?
The sound should be from here, from this one. We should switch off that one. The sound should be from here, from this one. We should switch off that one.
Can you start again?
From here, another sound.
Yes.
That's why we hear.
Can you start again? The volume is low. Just hold on, Irina. The volume is too low. Yes. The volume is low. Just hold on, Irina. The volume is too low.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, thanks.
Go
Hello?
ahead, Irina. We can hear you.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks.
There is again.
Go ahead, Irina. We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
I hope you. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, thanks.
There is again this feedback loop.
Go ahead, Irina. We can hear you.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Say yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay,
I don't think it's
thanks.
really working
Okay,
with the
thanks.
sound. It really sounds like a DJ using when a
Can you
phrase
hear
is
us?
repeated a number of times. Yeah, I don't think it's really working
Okay,
with the
thanks.
sound.
Okay.
There is again this feedback loop.
Let's try this again.
When a phrase is
us?
repeated a number of times. I don't think it's really working. It really sounds like a DJ using
Let's try this again.
when a phrase is repeated a number of times. I don't think it's really working.
So please, can you ask her to speak? Irina, can you say a word? Let's just see if there's still some feedback. No, unmute that.
Irina? Say something, please. Oh, it's not working. We can't Irina? hear you. Say something, please. Let me just try to respond to this. It's not working. We can't hear you. Let me just try to respond to this. If you look at that slide, it is from a site known as Curtin Open Knowledge Initiative.
I have no idea what's going on. I've just muted it. I have no idea what's going on. I've just muted it.
This is not working.
I can it comes true.
This is not working.
Irina, if you hear me, I think we should save you some time. It's we're not able to get the sound and video working. If you hear me, I think we should save you some time. It's we're not able to get the sound and video working, so I don't want to take any more of your time. If you've got any last thing to say to us, we'll just try and see if we can hear it without a loop.
Please just carry on without me because I don't want to distract your attention to those technical presentation and apologies for the sound issues, sir. Please just carry on without me because I don't want to distract
Thank you very much.
your attention
Very.
to those technical details. Well, thanks a
No,
lot
I
and,
just wanted to maybe
fruitful discussion.
explain that
Thank you very
this
much. Very.
website provides a dashboard for each country. No, I just wanted to if you look at the slide, what it was saying was that explain that in terms of the website provides a dashboard for each country access. And if you look at the slide, what it was saying was that in terms of the percentage of articles that were open access publications for Botswana, it's 39%. Open. And you're talking about 6,326 doing enough publications, and out of those, only 2,468 are open. Basically, just saying, we're not just doing enough, and we need to do more. Listened very attentively to Irina, and I think she provided a framework for us. Had just indicated that we librarians listened very attentively to how we might implement, and I think she provided a framework for us as policy implementation by librarians. So on how we might implement of open science who will be policy implementations made by UNESCO. So I have with me a team of librarians who will be talking to the 3 areas of the status of open access and open science in Botswana, policy frameworks for open access and open science, and then capacity building. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves once again, just in case you've forgotten who they were, where they come from, and so on. Very quickly.
At the Botswana International University of Science and Technology. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Ayan Dalebele.
Is my
I
name.
serve as Director
I'm
Library
Director Library
Services
Services
at the Botswana International University of
Agriculture
Science and
Natural
Technology.
Resources. Buan
Thank
for
you.
short. Thank you. Jan Sano is my name. I'm Director Library Services at the Botswana University for Agriculture and Natural Resources.
I'm the head
Buan
of
for short.
the
Thank you.
library at Bitri.
Good afternoon, I'm Commons
Oradijeng. Knowledge Commons Manager. That's my
Thank you
job
very much.
title,
Good afternoon,
but I'm
colleagues.
the head
My
of
name is
the
Alfred Maisiri.
library
I'm Director
at
Library
Bitri
Services
and
at University of
also
Botswana.
the research manager.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Alfred Maisiri. I'm Director Library Services at University of Botswana.
Good afternoon.
Botswana
I'm Polokwane Tokwani.
Institute for
I'm
Policy
the
Analysis,
manager, knowledge
it's a
management
think
and
tank of
dissemination.
Botswana
Thank you very much.
Institute for
And
Policy
without much
Analysis.
ado, I am going to
It's
ask
a
the
think
first
tank of
few
Botswana.
questions as pertains to the status.
Thank you
I
very
would like
much. And
Miss,
without much
Naniki
ado, I
Mapapwane
am going to ask
to
the first
paint a
few
picture
questions
of open
as
access and open
pertains
science
to the
in Botswana.
status. I would
And
like
what
Miss
she sees
Naniki
as the
Mapapwane
possible contribution
to paint a
of
picture
libraries
of
in
open
Botswana.
access and open
I would
science in
also like her
Botswana,
to address
and
the question
what
of whether
she sees
we
as the
do
possible
have the
contribution
requisite
of
platform
libraries
for
in Botswana.
collaboration
I would
to
also
advance,
like her to address the
open
question
access
of
and
whether
open science,
we
and also
do have maybe
the requisite
just a little bit on
platform
the
for
challenges
collaboration
and how
to
we might
advance
get over them.
open access and open science, and also maybe just a little bit on So
the
over to you.
challenges
I would want
and
you to-
how we
to
might
talk to those
get over them.
questions,
Naniki, you're
if
not
you
listening to the moderator.
I didn't listen.
So
teacher.
over to you. I would want you to
But,
talk to those questions, if you
I'll
would.
just say something that
Mm.
as the library community here, I didn't listen, teacher. But we in I'll just say
Botswana
something that
are at
different as the
stages
library community
of,
here, you know, we in Botswana in terms of are at different stages of open science. You know, as uptake in terms of open access. We are from different open science education institutions here in Botswana. And as the introductions have already been done, we are from different higher education institutions here in Botswana. And there are two other colleagues who are not here. We have always been working together. Apart from the Botswana Library Consortium, we came then to form this team. There are two other colleagues who are not here. It was one ministry. Because the Ministry of Education, we were edged by the then, before it merged, I don't know what it is called now, but before it was one ministry. To talk in terms of we were edged by the sharing resources. Permanent Secretary then, Dr. Moko, to come together to look at to talk in terms of sharing resources around the world, and not only sharing resources, but also look at trendy issues that are on happening around the world, especially in terms of open science, open access. So today, the status each one of us will give a synopsis of areas. Like Ayanda is going to give us an overview of the status of where we are as a country. They will give us an overview. She is with open access and especially in higher education institutions. They will give us an overview of the status of open access and infrastructure or open science, especially in higher education institutions in Botswana. In terms of we'll also appreciate we uptake policy and infrastructure issues here in Botswana. Research, you know, they are very critical in terms of ensuring that access to we uptake what we want to do. In terms of research, sharing, collaboration, and also access to information. We'll also address issues of capacity building in terms of how far have we had anything, any impact in terms of capacitating our librarians in terms of supporting the new environment of open science, open access. And I think, moderator, thank you very much.
Briefly contextualize Botswana libraries in the development. Thank you. Particularly on I will briefly contextualize Botswana libraries in the before getting to that, let me contextualize this particularly on how we have been guided by the in developing institutional repositories. National Vision 2036. Before getting to that, let me contextualize this by saying, as we all know, we are guided by the 2 3. We draw from, and they all draw from the aspirations of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the AU Agenda 2063. Both they have a strong element. We draw from, and they all draw from the aspirations of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the AU Agenda 2063. So both they have a strong element of diversifying the economy through human development and engagement. So the country then had to assess and re-engineer processes and structures in the education sector. And we saw also the development of supportive parastatal institutions. National economy. But these research institutions and the higher institutions of learning, they have a collective mandate to generate knowledge so as to transform national economy. But these research institutions and the higher institutions of learning, innovative
They have
products.
a collective mandate to
So
generate knowledge so as to
now when I
transform
come
planning
to
for economic
how the libraries
diversification
come
and
into
to
it,
inform development of innovative products.
the research output
So
from these institutions
now
is
it's
when I come
predominantly
to
in hard
how
copies.
the libraries come
They are
into
hard
it.
to hard to reach.
With the concern is that
They are
the
in
research
platforms that are
output
very private,
from
or they are
these
in desks,
institutions
or they
is
are
predominantly
in hard copies.
Some of it
They
probably
are
just
hard
in
to
an
they are hard to
individual's,
reach. They are in platforms
private,
that are very private, or
whatever
they are
they
in
say.
desks, or they are
So
in
the
their own
academic
private
and research
computers.
libraries,
Some of it probably
we
just
felt
in
we
an
had a
individual
broader
goal
goal of promoting and managing
private,
the research output
whatever I may say.
of these
So the
individuals.
academic and
And
research
the research
libraries,
output at national
we
level
felt
and
we
at
had a broader
institutional
goal
level.
of
And we also
promoting and
realized that
managing
we
the research
have a
output
responsibility to
of these
facilitate
individuals,
access to
and the
flexible
research output
information
at national level and at institutional
hence
level.
we-
And we also realized
this
that we
goal,
have a
the
responsibility
academic and
to
research
facilitate
libraries,
access to flexible
we
information,
then
and
realized the need to leverage
hence
on the
we,
ICTs and
towards
open
this
access
goal,
facilities
the academic
to
and
increase
research libraries,
visibility and to increase
we then realized the need to leverage
So
on the
we
ICTs and open access
we
facilities
bought in the
to
idea
increase
of
visibility
developing
and to
institutional
increase
repositories.
these hidden pieces. So we
Probably at this
developed,
point then get to
we
say
bought in the idea
consortium.
of developing institutional
The consortium
repositories.
has always been advocating for
Probably
open
at this
access
point then
for
get to
development of
say
institutional
the
repositories in
consortium.
Botswana. So with
The consortium has always been advocating for
economy and the
open
realization
access for development of institutional
research pieces
repositories
were
in
hidden
Botswana.
elsewhere.
So
Then
with the
we
agenda that was
pushed
coming,
in this
with the need
agenda
to diversify
through the
economy
consortium.
and the realization
And through
that
the academic and research librarians.
research pieces were hidden elsewhere,
We have had
then
many
we
trainings. I think I
pushed
need
in
not
this
to go into
agenda
that, but in
through the
2017,
consortium
we
and
formed
through the
this
academic and
mini,
research
should I say,
librarians.
formal group to start supporting
We have had
each
many
other in
trainings.
capacity
I think I
building
need
and
not
training
to
each
go
other
into that. But in
towards that
2017,
end.
we formed this mini, should I say, formal group to start supporting each other and capacity building and training each other towards that end. So because of both the BLC and the interim committee that I may say, or this support group of academic and research libraries that we had formed, we have had several workshops and we have information sharing platforms. In 2019, if I may be specific, we were supported by the Association of African Universities to train librarians, researchers, and IT experts on developing institutional repositories. Because at that point, we had only one registered institutional repository in the country. So post that training, where we had 36 librarians, 13 IT experts, and then 11 researchers, we then had a follow-up and realized that following that, we moved from that one registered to now 8 institutions indicating that they had started something, and they were at different levels. We have made progress. As we speak right now, we have 4 registered institutional repositories that we have identified. I think I need to underline that we have identified. We have, actually before I talk about the 4 registered ones, the 8 that reported that they had started post the workshop, they are at different stages as I indicate there. Some of them have, actually starting we mean even being at the level of just negotiating with the institutional leadership. That is a start. Even if you haven't started developing a repository, just that level, it's a hassle. So where we are right now, we have 4. I think I could quickly go up. Just to speed up, let's go to the next slide. We have 4 registered institutions. The next one, I guess. I'm not going to explain what an institutional repository is. Yes, that's where I want us to land. We have 4
universities that have functional digital archives for scholarly research papers, theses, dissertations, and conferences. UB, they registered in 2009, Boto in 2015, BOU in 2016, and BUST is the last baby. I then picked in Google this ranking. You can see we are not doing that well, but there are many challenges to this. My engagement with those who manage the repositories is, for example, when you look at what it says by items in the repository, UB, of course, doesn't have 378. The reason why it picks 378 is a number of the items in the repositories would not meet the criteria for ranking. And the reason why we, for example, BUST, it reflects that we have, was it 18 or 17? But in actual fact, the repository has more than that. There are many factors that lead to us not, or to items being picked by the ranking authority, whatever it is, because of many other challenges of difference in IDs or metadata not entered properly, and that simply implies that we need to standardize. And for us to be able to standardize, we need to register with, we need to affiliate with accreditation boards, if I may say. So probably we would have like GIS was saying they have a repository. The question would be, probably they haven't registered elsewhere, but it is functioning. And because they haven't registered anywhere, nobody picks them. So these are the conversations that we need to be having. Where do we register? Let's agree to register at one point and then standardize according to the standards of that body that we have all agreed to register at. I think I've given that's the best picture that I can present. Thank you.
The challenges when it comes to, the visibility even of our repositories and their contents. If I may, unless somebody wants to make a comment on the picture of open access, open science in Botswana, if I may move on to the next topic, which really deals with policy frameworks, and just ask the colleagues to talk to what policy frameworks exist in Botswana that, in your view, would enable open access and open science. And if you like, the other way of asking it, what would we need to put in place in order to accommodate the open science infrastructure? Like, it's made up of a number of areas. So what really do we need in terms of policy, in terms of legals? We talk of the paths to openness. Paths to openness. Are there any that we as Botswana librarians have identified? Different paths to openness, if we do. And how do we mobilize researchers to embrace the shift from, the shift to open access and open science? So here we're really looking at policy, we're also looking at cultural issues. Thank you.
Can I ask Ayanda one question before? Yes, okay. Yes. Just out of curiosity, the ranking, what is it based on? Is it the number of items in the collection, or is quality related?
I wish Diallo could answer that for me. Personally, I would think both. The number of items are picked if they fall within the quality. So I would say, am I right, Tuelo?
Can I also jump in? Also, we should also remember that institutional repositories at universities form part of the university rankings. So our quality, whatever, you know, if we have a good institutional repository, we'll make it to the up numbers.
Thank you, Mama Pax. Yes, there are certain standards that Google Scholar has identified in order for ranking institutional repositories. But recently I learned that the more your items that are within repository, the more they're visible, the more they're viewed, the more they're accessed, is also contributing to the ranking. So you might have large numbers, but if your items are not viewed by the world, it's going to give you a very low mark, even though you have more items within IR. Thank you.
So in my view, then it becomes very clear that we still have a lot of work in terms of educating ourselves as the people that manage the institutional repositories. But not only that, also educating our researchers. Because when you look at that table, we've been in existence for a very long time, but clearly we are not getting the items uploaded onto the institutional repositories. And I think that shows that we need to do more advocacy, more training. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, you did mention that those handles are just, they don't play a very crucial role that we thought. So maybe I wanted to know whether these handles could contribute to the ranking, because it seems like the more your items are viewed or accessible to the world, you gain more points. Maybe you can touch on that one on the handles. And also, I just learned that this space can give you the DOI. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe you can also touch the handle and the DOI one. Thank you.
So in either case, right, so we know persistent identifiers we need, whatever we call them. So your DOI system is actually handles. It's based on the same handle system. So what do you get when you join DataSite or for your repositories, or when you sign up to get, you get a namespace. You get a way to generate those identifiers for your articles. So, and that's what, and because that, right, is synced and is kept so that it's discoverable, that's why your applications are discoverable, because that system, and it's a global system, and everybody, that it will resolve, that link will always resolve to the content. Once you're managing that, then yes, you are discoverable. The difference is when that system isn't part of a larger system, then that you lose that discoverability. So that placeholder is meaningless. If you look at the structure of those references, they usually have a link, like in the DOI, then there's a space, a namespace, and then your articles are just sort of move on from that point. If you go to anyone, you will see that it's part of that link describes a namespace. Now, when you don't have, and that namespace resolves globally. So it means anybody who follows that link will come to that piece of the article, the data, or the publication, as the case may be. If it is a link that's not resolvable, then it's not discoverable. Some of this, keep in mind that the reason why this is important is not to say that you cannot go to the place and look at it, but if I'm a machine, or if I'm an application that's consuming this information, without these links, I can't do it. So persistent identifiers, the identifiers of that piece of the document or the data, but within a broader system. So in data site like this, in some countries, the NREN or the Library Consortium is a consortium that manages those references for the country. So maybe that be in the conversations we're having with about persistent identifiers in Africa, this organization might also start to look at how it serves its community. I don't know if I answered your question, but we can talk more about that.
Can I say something also? If I may, there are tools, open access tools, open source. You can download them from the web. You can use them directly today. That tells you the quality, of a repository and guide you how to improve its quality. For instance, in Europe, they have now for the last 2 or 3 years mandated deposit only in trusted repositories, where trusted is defined legally. So not any repository, not just put somewhere, but there are a series of criteria and measures, and you see whether your repository can be trusted or not, meaning that it's findable, exposes all the information, has the right set of metadata and so on. So that's available, that's open source, these tools, you can use them tomorrow. This is one. The second one that I didn't get from the presentation is that you have these institutional repositories, trustable or not, they still need the further development. At the same time, there is talk about a national repository, right? And at the same time, there are disciplinary repositories. So I imagine that people researchers in Botswana institutions, some of them deposit nowhere, some of them deposit in institutional repositories, some of them deposit in disciplinary repositories, community repositories like Archive for physics and for bioarchive for biology and many others. And some of them may deposit in international repositories. So the question is, how do you see all this articulated? What is the policy of the universities? Does the university oblige researchers to deposit somewhere or in the institutional repository? In France, for instance, you can do whatever you want. Now, for the last 3 years, they have created a national repository, and it's a big country called HAL, H-A-L, and everybody has to deposit. They can deposit anywhere else they want, but at least one too, so that the French can keep control of their scientific production. They know everything. Many people complain about this system because they say, but I want to deposit in these deposits that I deposit all my life, and now I will have to do it the second time for the national repository. You say, tough luck, you have to do it second time because we want to keep track of everything. Others can adopt a different policy and say, so you have to discuss what is the policy of the institution in your case, but with when government is present, also of the country, which I didn't get from the presentation, and how this policy is enforced. So if the policy, for example, is an obligation to deposit at the institutional repository, how is this enforced?
Next speaker, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon once again, colleagues. Right, the focus is going to be on policy frameworks and infrastructure. In my review of literature, I picked that policies exist in all spheres of life, even at family level. If you say no TV before assignments, that means that's a policy, and it acts as a guideline. Now, coming to open science, all the strategies and actions that we consider that foster or promote principles of open science, fair, and all the acknowledgements surrounding those principles all constitute open science. And we have been hearing about open science since morning. And you also realize that open science policies, or just policies in general, they are enunciated by government, by publishers, by research institutions, And I'm happy to confirm that at least today we were able to make inroads. There is direction towards open science policy guided by the government of Botswana. I'm sure the representative was here, and also an index to open data. You ought to realize that these policies are critical and put around issues of institutional support and also capacity development. Now, there are a number of issues that have been considered in Botswana in order to foster the proper implementation of open science movement. And in particular, the focus has been on what legal frameworks to look at in order to make sure that we promote this movement. And we have the following policies that you can see on the screen. The Data Protection Act of 2018. The focus of this policy, or rather act, is to regulate issues of privacy, issues of personal data. We need to make sure that people data is well taken care of, protected, it's secure. The next consideration in terms of legal framework or legal provision is the Maihlamo policy of 2004. The focus of this act is to ensure that we have ICT development countrywide. You have heard the talk from the morning that there is need for us to have digital transformation in the country, and the infrastructure in terms of telecommunications has also been considered as part of this act. So this is one framework that fosters open science practices here in Botswana. The other focus is on copyright and neighboring rights acts. You realize that when people produce their intellectual outputs, this must be respected. So the authors have rights which need to be protected, and this act takes care of that. So it recognizes the intellectual property rights of the creators. The other thing that we need to consider around the legal frameworks is Cyber Crime and Computing Act. You realize that we need to have that legal environment which is free from piracy, among other issues, so that our NREM is a safe environment, it's secure. The issues of cyber insecurity are also taken care of, so there is monitoring and evaluation in terms of what will be happening in our infrastructures. Now, in order for us to realize the open science movement, there are a number of pathways that we need to consider, as has been indicated by the moderator earlier on. Open science policy itself is one pathway to realize that we indeed are covered in terms of taking care of open science. Then open access publishing. This basically means we are replacing the usual non-scientific publishing model by ensuring that we go and publish the open access way. For example, PLOS is doing a lot of work in terms of promoting this. We also have Archivit is also doing a lot of work in terms of making sure that we promote open science. Then F1000 research is also under consideration under open access publishing. But looking at open data or open cloud, I was happy when Omo was talking about what is happening in Japan, the gyro. Yeah, I can confirm that as I was going through, I about 675 organizations actually contributing to that platform. So it's something that is laudable, which we also need to emulate. In Brazil, they have what they call the virtual herbarium, which focuses on collection of data around biology. Gyro has already been talked about. Then ESOC in Europe, this is also an open data cloud that we need to also emulate from. But I would like to believe that our neighbors, South Africa, are doing a lot as well towards that area. Then open research is also another pathway to open science. We must be able to allow other researchers to access our researches so that they may be able to modify that research, so that in the process we enhance faster dissemination and circulation of that information. Of course, having considered various submissions around the review process, that way we will also be able to take care of issues of quality. Then reproducibility is also one pathway that we need to consider around issues of open science. In other words, the methodologies that we are using in terms of carrying out our research processes, are they credible enough such that if the next author wishes to use the very same method, he or she will come up with the same results. So it's a way of validating the results. So we are encouraging our researchers here in Botswana to make sure that they use those methodologies that are clear and clean, and also be open enough with their research output so that other colleagues can be able to review the research output, make comments in order to better the output. We also need to have another pathway on having shared vision or mission. You realize that there are instances where we are not able to do things on our own. Therefore, issues of collaboration are key, and this is one strategy that emphasizes the need to promote open science. So, there is need for us, especially in research organizations or universities, to promote interdisciplinary research. That way, it means we have collaboration that brings out team effort. And two is better than one. That has always been the case. The reason why we are here is because we also have consortia effort that is coming into play. So it's also an aspect of collaboration that sees us having shared vision. We can also look at increased quality and impact. The peer review processes that happens around the research work that we do also allows for rigorous scrutiny of the work, so that the works that we produce can easily be validated, and this way even the impact that the work has will be high. Right, then I think this also goes hand in hand in another pathway of transparency and rigorous evaluation. Basically what we need here is to have what we call open evaluation of intellectual output, get credible notes from people through peer reviews. The evidence will not be disputed in the long run. So once we have people coming into play, reviewing the work, it means the result that we get at the end of the day will be credible. Right, in terms of infrastructure, I'm sure a lot has been talked about. Omo talked about a lot about infrastructure. Therefore, need I go into that? But over and above in Botswana, we, as you have heard from previous speakers, we are making use of digital archives, institutional repositories, free open access journals that we are promoting. We also have the open catalogs then open educational resources that we are trying to work around, so that at least the issue of wide access to research resources goes out to a lot of our people. I think over and above, this is as far as we can talk about with regards to policy issues, pathways to open access, considering that issues of infrastructure have already been dealt with in detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Re, for that presentation. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience on that, but if, yes, please.
On the peer review, like the quality of the publications, you mentioned that that is the plan to make sure transparency and rigorous evaluation, that we would be based that on the peer reviews. But from the observation in Botswana, mostly academic institutions are not really doing much research. I don't want to name the universities, but there are few researchers in university. If you go, for example, we had last time the International Data Week in 2018, Botswana was not in the list in terms of research publications that are recognized out there. We might say that we have publications, we do. Some of them, if you look at them, they really don't meet the standards that we can compete internationally. So the concern on the peer review one is the review is like, I think the first presenter mentioned that tendency nowadays, you be a lecturer, you give your students to you your paper, and then you are just maybe being co-author. And then in terms of the review, you can even nominate them if they're maybe doing PhD to do part of the peer review for some of your papers. So how do we really establish the quality part that we can be able to compete internationally in that area when you mentioned that? I think that is where I would need more emphasis and clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right, there are a number of things that ought to be considered. Number one, if you are indeed a true researcher and you know your destiny, you would basically want to produce work that is authoritative, work that is reliable, work which can actually identify with you as an individual, work that can identify with your institution, and work that can also identify with you and your country. Therefore, what we are doing is to continue to bring awareness in terms of the negatives of skipping some of the critical stages in terms of peer review processes. However, what we also have in universities, for example, is we have what are called research forums, where someone can actually make a presentation, just like what we are doing today. And colleagues around will be able to go through, give comments, which are meant to better the output of that paper. So also guided by what I said, that you ought to know yourself, what you want to achieve at the end of the day. Because it will not make sense to say after 10 years and you are now a professor and you are told that this paper of yours has been revoked. So at that level, you will not need anything that is associated with any negativity. Right? So we are trying our level best to ensure that quality is promoted. And apart from that, even when the paper is sent for publishing, the publishers don't straight away publish. They also go through, they have editorial teams that go through your work. If there are any areas that need attention, those things can also be attended to. And also, you have colleagues who are subject experts in the same field with you. Check with them again to make sure that the quality is maintained. Thank you. I don't know whether my colleagues have other things to add.
I had.
Are you speaking on the same? Yes. Yeah.
No, I just had a quick comment. So, because that's also a consideration elsewhere, especially with content in repositories. So, if we're going to be putting content in these repositories, we have to find ways of, sort of annotating them to define, to sort of like review them in some way. Also, in Costas's presentation, he talked about some newer models of publishing, where some of the, the PRC model, where you publish first and you review and curate. So we are finding out the same challenge that you just have highlighted, that we could do with more reviewers in Africa. Even in the traditional space, a lot of the reviewers are not Africans. So, and for your journals, whether they're here or elsewhere, growing capacity in that space would all work for us ultimately. So we are about to embark on a new program built on colleagues that have other organizations that have been looking at open peer reviewing. In our case, we're just looking at reviewing capacity. So we want to take some of what that scenario you described, where you have a journal club or you've got a group of people working on things, and bring that online. So, and grow communities. So you'll be, if as part of what we're doing, we would encourage the Botswana and BLC to join us in LIBSENSE. So that you might have a community here that we would use in this program. So infrastructure-wise, we are going to provide you with an open peer review platform, and then there's also I don't know, in your research you might have come across a new project from the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. It's called Notify, and the idea is that content in repositories can be reviewed. So in our case, in the model we have for the demonstrator, we are going to have a general purpose repository and this review platform, and there will be communication between the platform, the repository. So if you put something in, somebody can request a review. The review goes to the platform for reviewing platform. A community, maybe his group of experts would have formed a community, and they would either accept and review. And in that way, plus some other more modern ways of commenting on resources, social annotation, and so on and so forth, we build this capacity, and we get some transparency on the artifacts. So that way you can judge its quality.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would like to ask a question two questions actually, to the presenter. One is, it relates to my previous point. So this policy that you described, where university encourages openness and sharing and so on and so forth, in what practical ways? Where is it a paper that people are encouraged, or they actually have to do it? How? How do they have to do it? How is the policy enforced, and how is it monitored? First question. And secondly, in the law on copyright that you mentioned briefly on your slide, on your first slide, how does it treat research? Does it have special provisions for research? And what does it say about copyright? If it is copyright of scientific publications, for example, does it say about sharing and openness? Does it say about the possibility of giving away your copyright? What are the specific provisions for research?
Okay, I'll respond to that. Actually, my comment was going to be partly on the question that you asked about enforcement. In terms of institutional repositories, I want to believe that the open access policies for the institution would prescribe what has to be done once the publication is out. And unfortunately, I read the UB policy some years back, but it is there in the policy that as a researcher, once you have published, the requirement is that you should deposit, you should upload your article yourself. But you find that in most cases, they fail to do that. So it's up to the librarians to pursue the researchers or the lecturers and follow up on what they have published and then upload the articles. And then when it comes to the national space, in Botswana, we still don't have a national open access repository, but we do have an act which I believe can be useful. It can be useful as it is, or it can be amended to have something that talks specifically to the digital environment. The Legal Deposit Act, which requires that anything that is published by a Botswana, in Botswana, or about Botswana should be deposited in identified legal repositories, which are the National Library, University of Botswana, and National Archives. So once we have that open access platform, the National Open Access Platform, the Act can be applied, but it may require some amendments to specifically talk to the digital environment. On the Copyright Act does not talk about open access, but it talks about the copyright rights of the creators of content. Yeah, so it doesn't talk about open access. Yeah, but the thing is, it can be used to protect the rights of those who deposit and those who create things like software or enabling platforms. They would somehow be protected by the Copyright Act. Yes, no, that is very true, and I think it is a point that is appreciated, and I want to believe that the working groups that have been identified today, that is something that they need to have in mind when they talk about these things. There might be a way of influencing some changes somewhere in our policy and legislation so that we can accommodate something like that. Make it mandatory for public-funded research to benefit the people that it is meant to benefit.
Sorry to speak again, but for instance, in some countries, I don't know in Botswana, you cannot teach at the university using a newspaper expert. We had famous, we have famous court cases where teachers or universities have been taken to court because in class they showed journal articles. Because, you know, it was a sociology course and they were showing, you know, copies of journals saying, you know, this happened and this happened, what do you think, to the students. And this is normally illegal in several countries. I don't know in Botswana. Because, you know, the newspaper has a copyright. The owner has a copyright, so you cannot just go around and show what it is in the newspaper. But in most countries, there are exceptions for this, which say that for educational purposes, you can use, and it's very specific, you can use up to so much, you should not copy more than, let's say, 1 page every time, you know, things like that. So the copyright law needs to be very specific about education issues. There's a lot of background to this. Otherwise, you cannot, both research and education are completely hampered.
Yeah, that's they say it's a dialogue. But the Botswana Copyright Act actually does have exceptions for education. Now, my last point is that I think we need to appreciate what the government has done so far in terms of infrastructure. I don't know if you are aware that there's been cabling, I don't know what it is called in ICT, fiber optic or something. They've been busy laying cables in Tokwen. They've been very busy digging up spaces everywhere. That is to enable connectivity. So we have some improvement in the level of connectivity. As librarians, we've been crying for so many years because we couldn't reach our customers beyond cities or towns. So with that in place, and once the Botswana starts operating and there's connection, we are going to be able to reach people, Baba Koma Muno and all those places.
Thank you. I wanted to talk on policy. They covered it extensively at national level. But when I was scanning to understand the landscape at institutional level, I observed there were very qualified librarians ready to even take up the development of institutional repositories. In institutions where there was a policy on paper, and practice and culture of the researchers and of the institutional management, it was not happening. So it's one thing saying we have a policy, but supporting institutional repositories, the librarians were complaining of lack of supportive structures in terms of policy structures or processes to support. Therefore, the researchers don't see anything forcing them to deposit. And that is one of the reasons. Or even when they have deposited, you don't have that much right to help them in enhancing the quality that she referred to, because in most cases, they don't have any incentives. They are not getting any reward for depositing, according to them. It's you as the librarian who knows the rewards, but they don't see it and they don't appreciate, and leadership is not enforcing. So there is no connection. Thank you.
We've done justice to that one, and I'd like us to move along because time is not on our side. So I'd like us to look at the building capacity to support open science. And, would like to know, really, because the understanding is that advocacy and capacity building are critical for participation in the open science infrastructure. So what initiatives can we point to that the librarians in Botswana, within Botswana and in their own institutions and within BLC, what have they done? But also, have you identified the new skills, the knowledge, and the competencies that are required to carry us forward into the open science space as librarians and as researchers as well? And how are we promoting open science? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The issue of capacity building has been in our conversations throughout the day, and we cannot overemphasize the need, to retool or to capacitate both all the stakeholders, all the players in this environment. These are librarians, these are researchers, and all the educators, because we need the education sector, to participate effectively in this environment. In terms of skills, those have been mentioned. The need to have new skills to enable the participants or the players to effectively, play their role in the new environment. And we have listed some of these as the technical skills,
in data science stewardship, which has been mentioned earlier. We need skills in terms of information and data literacy, information literacy, and of course even curation. I know librarians have those skills from library school, but in the environment of technology and digital, we're talking about curation and long-term preservation and archiving, and of course a bit of technical codings that Metuelo has mentioned earlier, because librarians also need a bit of technology in terms of handling some of these things. So those are some of the technical or the skills that we need for librarians to empower them. We have had a number of initiatives in the past that has provided skills and training for librarians and even our researchers. At Botswana Library Consortium, we've had external partners who have supported us since 2010. That's a very long time back when we started talking about repositories and developing repositories, and we've had a number of activities. Since 2010, we at BLC had annual conferences that were meant to celebrate open access achievements across the globe. And we, during those activities, would have workshops, we'd have experts to come and, provide training for the participants. And credit must be given to, in particular, to IFL, Electronic Information for Libraries, because they provided training in terms of supporting BLC to train repository managers, researchers. If you see this young girl, she comes from the hands of Botswana Library Consortium. And I'm very proud because even this one next to me found it fit to poach Tuelo from my institution. Anyway, we've had, and I'm also wanting to appreciate IFLA. I think IFLA also has supported Botswana Library Association in terms of capacity building in some of these areas. And then Ayanda earlier on talked about the training that was hosted by AAU, where a number of our librarians were trained, and the researchers were also took part in that. I also want to appreciate the role of CODATA. We had a national conference in 2018. It was international, where, in collaboration with ODOS, CODATA was supporting that activity, and they have also provided training for us. For instance, in my institution, we collaborated with CODATA, and we provided training for digital stewardship for researchers and librarians. And we trained 13 officers. There were librarians and researchers from across the country, because they had to apply for that. So in terms of training, we have some footprints that we have done. The only thing that I can say is that the environment now is conducive. If you look back and imagine that we started talking about open access as far back as 2010, and also in terms of developing repository at our institution and even at national level, And the number of repositories that Ayanda mentioned, really, we haven't done much. But the problem was that the environment was not conducive. All the players that were supposed to play were not yet on board. Some of them didn't even know what was happening. So I think right now, because government is on board through Botswana, really I'm very excited that we are going to be moving somewhere. And I urge all of us in this room, let's seize this opportunity. When you have an officer, a high-ranking officer from the office of the president, talking about policies, really we should be running. We shouldn't even say in a month, we should say in a week, we shall be giving a draft. Because we are talking, you know they change so easily, these people, these policy makers. Maybe tomorrow we'll have a different government who is not interested in that. So the longer we wait, we'll lose out. So let us come together and make this a reality. Thank you so much.
Just to buttress the issue of capacity building, like Memama Pakwada has just alluded to. One of the missing links in the whole mix is the senior academic leadership. For those of us who are in the universities, is the executive management. So I think if you are to cause a cultural shift, the desirable cultural shift that will yield some results as quickly as possible, we need to see how we bring those guys on board. This thing should not appear like it's a library thing. I think we have to find a way of mainstreaming it so that as many players as possible, jump into the stream. Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I failed to also urge Bahai Sohore, let us work together. Because the other thing that is killing us here is that we are working in silos. And Mr. Maiziri here at the University of Botswana, if I asked him, please Maiziri, can you share an IR policy so that I don't have to restart the whole thing? Maiziri is going to take ages to send me the policy. Somebody in this room owes me. I asked for a policy, even today. They are not sending the policy. But so let us share. I mean, why should we not be sharing? Yeah? Mr. Maiziri has just joined the University of Botswana.
On issue of advocacy, yes, and bringing institutional leadership, it is not easy. I'm just coming from a seminar this morning where I took advantage of some experts who are attending this and brought together Senate for a seminar on open access. Heads were rolling because it's the mind shift. We were trying to say to them, this is where we are going. And it's still not easy, but it's doable. So as librarians, we are trying. It's just that we probably need to get other experts like Professor Masupe or people who are already in open access to be the ones talking to their colleagues who are in leadership. Because from our side, we know what is to be done. And when we say it, because we are not in leadership, we don't make the desired impact. So if we put together a team of the Bomamwaris, the Prof. Masupe, and they present the case to institutional, to the Vice Chancellors, if I may be direct, executive management.
Before I give this to you, I think the fact that we are gathered here today and we are such a diverse group is a very good start.
And speaking from the point of view, yeah, the Botswana Open University, we've recently launched a colloquium series. And I think the problem with librarians is there's a lot of talking amongst ourselves. That's preaching to the converted already. But there's a need, I've always said this, there's a need for us to come out and face those Goliaths, if we can call them that. And so I challenge you. I challenge you. You can talk to Dr. Squela and have a colloquium where we will invite the Vice Chancellor's forum to attend. Yes.
You said everything I was going to say, so maybe we just have a, because I was going to say the research networks are exactly the same. For a long time, the NRENs were talking to themselves. So they would go, okay, we're going to give them this infrastructure, we'll give them that, and we'll give them that. But then along the line, we hit the same issue, that we needed some closer communication with our stakeholders, and that the library was the principal stakeholder in this. And that's how LIBSENSE was born. So yes, you're already on your path. Like you said, this meeting was very diverse, and I think it's actually been one of the more diverse ones we've had in the recent past.
Thank you very much for the presentations. In terms of bringing in our chiefs, as it were, you know, the aspect of legislation and policy and the need for compliance, you've mentioned the Data Protection Act. There's also the Electronic Records Evidence Act and others. And I think as a country, we are slowly beginning to realize that in order to be able to interact with the outside world, we need to be compliant. So the Data Protection Act is going to push us very fast into that area. I'm very much aware that we have delayed in terms of implementation because of the issues of readiness and establishing an office that can actually drive that. But there's no way that we can escape that as a country. So one of the things that we need to emphasize is readiness, preparedness, to ensure that they come to the party. And the issue that has just been mentioned right now, that we have to ensure that we bring in all of these different players. Yes, we are librarians in here. We need to bring in the archivists also. I'm aware of the National Archives Act, which basically says access to information is about 27 years. And these are some of the things that we need to be looking into and saying, but when it comes to certain groups, not all, we know that it cannot be everything. There has to be restrictions here and there. But can we not open access when it comes to certain things? I am aware also that there has been advocacy in terms of freedom of information. And I know that a lot of our developed countries started with freedom of information. And that was a good foundation in terms of bringing the aspect of open science. For some reason in Botswana, we have become very quiet when it comes to freedom of information. And we can actually form that advocacy group in terms of ensuring that information becomes open in our country. But I'm very happy that, you know, this time we've had the opportunity to come together, to talk face to face, and hopefully there will be that cross-planting. And it's important for us to realize that when we go the open access route, it also opens access to resources. Because where you are limited, I'm also able to help you. So this has been very good for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to believe that we really have done justice to the topic, and that, you know, we've come to an understanding of where we are and where we need to go, and in a sense how we will get there. We will be presenting, let me let you in on a secret. This was really a rehearsal for for the symposium. So we will be presenting again on Friday, but we're going to do a post-mortem because there we have limited time. I think here we were spoilt in terms of time. Thank you very much for giving us the time. But, and we think that that is, again, taking it higher in terms of the diversity of the audience that will be there. So with that, let me thank you, Monsieur le Monsieur le President.
No, thank you very much. Yes, you know, yes, tomorrow is going to be a more regional sort of audience, so I suppose you will modulate your conversations accordingly. But yes, it was very informative. It's clear that the librarians we always knew this though, but they have a big role to play here. So I'm looking forward to the next steps. There's already, so if you tweet, please retweet. You're all on Twitter, some of you with pictures. So sort of extend the word. And I look forward to your presentation in the Botswana Alliance Conference. Thank you very much for staying up to this point.